Hey, welcome. Today we're going to make Pasteis de Tentugal. Pasteis de Tentugal is from a little town called Tentugal in about the middle of Portugal. It's about 15 miles away from Coimbra, a city that used to be the capital of Portugal. It's a huge college town. I believe it's one of the oldest universities. And in Tentugal, there was a convent there with the Frades de Carmelitas. That's the nuns of Carmelita, and the history of this dessert dates back to the 16th century. Really what's unique about this recipe is the dough they used. It's kind of similar to a phyllo dough. That's what I'm going to use today, but they make it in these special rooms. I'll put a link to a video. It's really fascinating just to check out like how delicate this dough looks. And they stretch it out. Basically, they say you want to get it so thin that you could read the Bible through it, and it's really that thin. All right, we're going to get started with the recipe. The first thing you want to do is get yourself some phyllo dough. You could find phyllo dough in the frozen section of your grocery store. But a key thing is you want to get this at least a day ahead of time because you want it to defrost in your refrigerator for at least like 8 hours up to 24 hours. But you can't just go buy it at the store and bring it home and start working with it right away. It has to kind of defrost slowly. All right, I have my ingredients all weighed out. You want to start by making your filling first because that way it needs to cool down slightly before you introduce it to the phyllo dough. So I have 1 cup of water, about a teaspoon of lemon juice, 1.5 cups of sugar. The sugar is coming up to a simmer. It's just starting to simmer. While I'm doing that, I'm going to melt about 4 ounces of butter. That's 1 stick of butter. Okay, the sugar is just starting to boil. You give it a stir. Now I'm going to turn it to just like medium. Just need it to be at a light boil or simmer. Once it comes to a boil, you want to let it boil for an additional 2 to 3 minutes. If you have an instant read digital thermometer, it should be between about 220 to 225 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, my sugar solution has been cooling off for about 5 minutes. So 1/4 teaspoon of salt in with the 10 egg yolks. Whisk those together. Then, let me see, you don't need a thermometer here, but just to give you an idea of the temperatures I'm working with. So it's at 160, 170, so that's a pretty hot temperature. At about 150, eggs start to cook. So you want to cook them, but you want to cook them gently. So this is a process of what we call tempering. I could let this probably cool off for another couple minutes, but I think it's close enough. But you temper it so you just get a little bit of the hot solution. This is probably like a tablespoon at a time. And you're just gently bringing this egg yolk mixture up to temperature. See, because what that does, the syrup solution was at 170, but you'll see the egg solution here is only at 83 degrees. So it slowly comes up to temperature. That prevents it from cooking too quickly. So when tempering, you want to start slowly. Now I'll drizzle in this mixture while whisking. So you still want to go slowly and incorporate it well. And then if I check this again, you don't need a thermometer, but I just like you to know what temperatures I'm working with. This is only at 120 now. So you can see that's a temperature where the eggs are not cooking. They're not thickening at 120. They're not cooking. All right, now we put our pot back over medium heat. You want to use probably a whisk in the beginning and then a nice heat-resistant rubber spatula to be sure it's not sticking to the bottom. So we'll dump our egg sugar mixture in there. And this is the traditional way to make it. Sometimes I put in about a 1/4 cup of almond flour. So these are just ground up almonds. It gives it a really nice flavor too. Or you could make half the batch traditionally and half the batch put in like 2 tablespoons of almond flour just to give it some of that almond taste. It's pretty good. Just to give you an idea of the thickness there. It's still pretty close to water. Now it's at 160, about 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Now it's where you want to be careful. Probably turn it to a lower setting and constantly stir once you get above 150 degrees Fahrenheit. Now I'm turning the temperature lower again. And it's definitely thicker, like almost like a thick syrup there. If you have cooked this too fast and you've gotten some clumps in there from the eggs coagulating, you can put this through like a fine mesh strainer. Okay, now I'm going to turn off my flame completely. See how thick that is? That looks good. It's sticking to the spatula, but it's still coming off. If I get my spatula, I'm sure I could put a line through it like that and it'll separate. Okay, now I'll pour this mixture into another vessel just to take it away from the heat. And now, just because I like variety, I'm going to pour about half this mixture, so about 1.5 cups, into this bowl. So there. Now I divided it equally, and I'll put about, this is the art of cooking, but I use about 2 full tablespoons. Actually, if I measured these out, it'll probably be 3 of almond flour. And again, this is just completely optional, but you know, that creative side of me always likes playing with different ingredients. All right, now you want your egg mixture to cool off. So you want it to get definitely down to room temperature for sure, so like 70 degrees. You want to cover it so it doesn't develop too much of a skin on top. Up to this point, you could make these, you know, easily 2 days ahead of time. And do not open your package of phyllo dough till you're ready to use it, because it dries out really easily and just could be a nightmare to work with. So trust me on this one. Keep it away from air. Don't open it until you have everything ready to go. Do not open the phyllo dough. All right, my mixture has been cooling down for about 2 hours. You can see it definitely thickens up as it gets cooler. And now I'm ready to open up my phyllo. You know, I have my spoon ready, my brush, my butter is melted. I have a cookie sheet pan with some parchment, or you could very lightly oil a cookie sheet pan. These don't stick too bad, as long as they don't leak. If it leaks, then it'll stick, but phyllo itself doesn't stick too much. And then I have 2 rags. These are damp, but I can't get like any water out of them. I just got water in the faucet and sprinkled it all over the towel. So you want them to feel damp, but definitely not to the point where you could wring any water out of them. And again, these are kind of delicate, so they are paper thin. It's almost inevitable that you will get some tears, like it's tearing there a little bit, it's tearing there a little bit. That's just kind of the nature of phyllo, but you want to be gentle with it. I don't know if you could see my face through there, but it is paper gossamer thin. So then whatever you're not using, you want to cover it with those towels that are just slightly wet. My oven is preheated to 400 degrees also. And I want to cut these in about 4 equal shapes. Brush the bottom half. Put the other sheet on top. You don't want to put too much of this filling, about a tablespoon, because it will want to run out. So just like that much, and then you just roll it up. And you don't want to push it to the very edge. You want about at least a 1/2 inch on these sides to give room for the filling to expand a little bit. Brush with a little butter, fold it over, fold it over. And I would suggest, if you haven't made these before, do like 4 and cook them in the oven. They don't take too long, like about 15 minutes, just until they start to get golden, just to test out if you're putting too much filling in there, because you don't want to like do a whole batch and realize you put way too much filling and it's exploding everywhere. Now I have the mixture. I put a little bit of almond flour in there. I've already tasted this. It's really good. Again, not traditional, but you can make a few this way if you like. Brush this edge with a little bit of butter. Fold again, that'll help it stick. Then fold over, pinch, brush with a little butter. If you want to check out some of my other recipes using a lot of egg yolks, check out my Pasteis de Tentugal or my ovos inchadas. And here's a little test batch I just made, the first 6, and you can see like this one I overfilled. It's exploding a little bit. The other ones look fine. They really don't stick that much. You just let them cool off, then we're going to dust them with powdered sugar. So again, if anything, go lighter on the filling. Dust them with a little powdered sugar. Thanks for joining me. Now go cook for someone you love. Don't forget to check out my website. The recipes are really easy to print out from there. They're all organized, easy to change the amounts. So you could, like, say you want to double the recipe and it'll just calculate it all out for you. So do that for me. Subscribe.